Today on the Idiot's Guide, have you ever felt the pressure to be perfect at some point? Maybe it was acing an exam, landing that dream job, or just keeping up appearances on social media. But what happens when the pursuit of perfection turns toxic? How does it affect our productivity, our creativity, and overall well-being? In this episode, we'll peel back the layers of toxic perfectionism and explore how it impacts us internally and externally. And we'll offer some practical tips to keep it in check. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka the Profit Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. What I found really difficult about this episode was the fact that I struggle with perfectionism. And it was very, very apparent when I started writing the notes about this episode. It was actually completely obvious that I was like, oh wow, I am everything about this episode. This is terrible.
I was a crazed perfectionist.
The internal side of things, looking at yourself and having some level of expectation, that you maybe unrealistically have, well, most likely unrealistically have, but then on the flip side, externally of some of those expectations that you usually press upon yourself, you're also pressing upon other individuals, which affect your relationships, how you communicate, even to the point of where you go in life, your success track. But you've done a little bit of homework, and so like, can you briefly kind of break down some of like the different categories as we define what perfectionism is?
Yeah, so not all perfectionism is negative. There is a healthy form of perfectionism. And I
Okay.
think that's an important thing to take away from here is that there is a healthy way to express that.
Well, there you have
But-
it. That's all I do is perfect.
Yeah, right.
Perfectionism.
I don't believe that for a second. I think there are a lot more people who suffer from, this toxic perfectionism than we realize.
Yeah.
But when healthy, perfectionism, and so what I'm reading here, this is from Psychology Today. This is an article that's been reviewed by the Psychology Today staff. So this doesn't have a specific author, but the staff kind of put together some basics on perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
So when healthy, it can be self-motivating and drive you to overcome adversity and achieve success. When unhealthy, it can be a fast and enduring track to unhappiness. Okay, so there are three forms of negative perfectionism: the self-oriented perfectionism, which is imposing an unrealistic desire to be perfect to oneself. Other-oriented perfectionism means imposing unrealistic standards of perfection on others.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's socially prescribed perfectionism, and that involves perceiving unrealistic expectations of perfection from others. And so that's where you perceive this expectation from other people to be perfect.
Okay.
So that's the social side. So there's self, other-oriented, and then socially prescribed perfectionism. The one type of perfectionism that is good is adaptive perfectionism.
Can you?
So yeah,
explain that?
adaptive. So adaptive or positive perfectionists set lofty goals, have high standards, and work relentlessly hard for their success. They are achievement oriented, whereas maladaptive perfectionists are failure oriented. Okay. So when we're talking about the negative, so what makes extreme perfectionism so toxic is that while those in its grips desire success, they are most focused not on the success, but most focused on avoiding failure, resulting in a negative orientation. And so they're not looking at the success of what they're doing and being perfect. They are looking at, I need to avoid failure in order to be perfect. And it's a really strong shift there, whereas the adaptive perfectionism is focusing on the success. Adaptive perfectionists desire growth, enjoy being challenged, and problem solve well. Their perfectionistic tendencies are a strength, not a weakness. And so when you're looking
That's
at,
that's hard to interpret. Like most people generally are not adaptive.
no, exactly. I think if for most people who are perfectionists, they are only trying to be perfect, not for the success of what they're doing,
Right.
but to avoid failing at what they're doing.
It's a fear rather than like a motivation.
Exactly. And
You're actually like, it's almost a trauma.
exactly. And that's a lot of the socially prescribed perfectionism and other oriented perfectionism, where someone was putting that on them. So someone else was that other oriented perfectionist
Yeah.
and pushing that on that individual to be perfect. And now they have this intense fear of not being perfect or of not getting it exactly right. And so it paralyzes them.
Okay.
And that's the toxic perfectionism. So being perfect, and there are a couple things that it talks about in here, how you can kind of tell the difference, but that adaptive perfectionism is looking at the success and they enjoy the success. So there's the idea that if they fail, they fail. But when they succeed, that's the joy.
Okay.
And so it's much more on that positive orientation of, I did it, yay me, as opposed to, I did it, phew, I didn't get in trouble. That's really the difference between the two types of, or between the positive and negative perfectionism.
Well, like, and let's unpack this a little bit further. But before, if this video content or any other videos that we like are helping you out in any way, give us a thumbs up. It really does help the channel. It makes it so that YouTube likes us. YouTube goes in and says, "Ooh, these people like it. We want to show these people over here." So you are helping us by getting our information further out there because you're engaging with that our whatever content that we have here. So we appreciate those thumbs up whenever you get a chance.
It appeases the AI overlords of the algorithm
The
to make sure that other people see us as well.
the overlord is a perfect
We must worship the
explanation
AI overlords.
of the machine. So internal internal struggle of perfectionism. So I've got some points that we can kind of work through in that, and I want to kind of play off of some of the stuff. So first and foremost is that your internal elements of the toxic elements of perfectionism. So first one would be like self-criticism. Okay, so thinking about it like unrealistically high standards of themselves. Like you mentioned, in the sense of going like, I'm setting a goal, and even though it could be high, it could be lofty, it is to prevent failure. And if I do fail, then or I never go about doing something because of the fact that it's not perfect enough.
Yeah, and that's actually so. On here is a paragraph, and we'll link this. But if you just go to Psychology Today, look for the article "Perfectionism," and you'll find it. But what are the signs that someone is a perfectionist? Perfectionists set unrealistically high expectations for themselves and others. They are quick to find fault and overly critical of mistakes. They tend to procrastinate a project out of their fear of failure.
I think for me, like the reason why I can really identify with this, unfortunately, that's sad, but I get stuck in something called a learning loop, and so I love learning. It's one of my favorite things to do, which is just learn whatever. That's why useless phrases and things like that, I'm like, man, I am armed with so much that there's no reason for me to do anything else but this.
Yeah.
But if I have a project, if I have something that I'm working on, I will learn everything about it and never execute because it's not perfect enough. It's not ready enough. There's not enough T's crossed. There's not enough I's dotted. And so for fear that I may fail at it. And so, I have reminders that I try to put in place so that I like that inspire me to pull the trigger. But that's sometimes my biggest challenge, is the fact that I will distract myself with more learning in order to validate the fact that I am trying to be a perfectionist about a project before I execute.
Yeah. I mean, this is a major problem for me as well. So if any of our viewers ever wonder why our channel is called Hot Potato Finance, and the only videos we ever put on there are the Idiot's Guide. I've got huge lists of stuff that I want to go through for the Hot Potato Finance channel, talking about a wide range of topics. But my perfectionism, my toxic perfectionism, I am paralyzed with writing the scripts for those, because even just writing notes, because we don't do word for word scripts, but just writing the notes for those to do those videos, I have to have it exactly right. And if I can't do it exactly right, I am terrified of doing it. And it's just, it paralyzes me from doing any more content that would help people. So fortunately, we do now have a scriptwriter. So finding ways to, work around this, who then, will be able to write that stuff for me, and that will help us move forward. But it's a really big thing to, just be afraid of not having it perfect.
Well, I think it leads into the next one, is that anxiety and burnout is, I hold myself to a particular standard that I try to do, and when working on stuff, but then, you know, like there is a constant stress that I'm struggling with. And sometimes with that, it creates, it, like I don't mean to do it. It's just trying to hold myself to that particular standard, or a deadline, or I do a lot of the outline scripting for this podcast, and so for me to be able to do that, it's a relief. I look forward to having an editor that does the lion's share of this in the future, but right now it is stressful. It is, it's I've come to you and gone like, I'm like pulling my hair out. I've got 8 directions I have to go today, right now. Like this was due yesterday, and I'm coming down to what time do we release the video on every single week? And I have expectations that I have to do. Well, then it doesn't matter. For example, last week I was in here till, or last week or the week, no, last week, before our episode went out last Friday, I was in here the night before till midnight, making sure that video was ready to go, because of all of our technical issues that happened that were out of my control. But me, the perfectionist, says, unacceptable. You will stay here. You will neglect your family. You will do all these other things and you subject yourself to this and burn that midnight oil, because that's all that's another term that we could use from the last episode. But like it's all of this, like it burns you out.
It does.
It causes undue stress that there's no reason for, and all for what reason?
Yeah,
Like,
and I
what's
want
the
you to know,
point?
I'm not imposing these on him. I'm not making him stay here till midnight.
Nope.
It is
self-inflicted.
I mean, we're talking about that self-oriented perfectionism. And I mean, it's one of those things, if it's not out on time, put a little note, hey, we ran into some technical difficulties, it'll go out on Saturday. That's the solution.
Yeah.
And so, but we put these on ourselves to,
I mean, I don't think we have a line of people going like, oh my goodness, this didn't show up. Like we took a month off and like not a peep,
some people do talk to me about that, but it's just one of those things where we push these burdens on ourselves, and that causes that anxiety, that causes that burnout, that causes that just overwhelming inside. Yeah, there's no word for it.
Yeah.
That just we have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And there are ways. I mean, one of the reasons why we're talking about this is because there are ways to kind of get away from that, to help resolve some of that. And you can work through that, but you have to realize what it is before you can start working on a solution.
And I think one of the other things that you run into is, once you get buried in this anxiety and burnout, you're on the edge of things. You're terrified of that failure. You have imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. So I have an expectation that's not realistic that I'm trying to basically get to. And because I don't, I call myself a fraud. And so, it's even when I've done something right, I've done something correctly, I'm still wrong.
Yeah.
And I struggle with this. It's something that, not necessarily, I mean, like, it definitely resonates with this, but this unrealistic thought of the fact that because I did the right thing in the moment, I'm still wrong.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with me. And so that's a peek into the screwed up head that I've got, but that I see therapists for,
Yeah.
but it's that thinking is like, even in a win, you look at yourself like a loser.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that it talks about on here. So this is the next sign that someone is a perfectionist. They shrug off compliments and forget to celebrate their success. And that's one of the things where you shrug off compliments. No, I'm not worthy of that because I'm not really good.
Yeah.
I'm bad at this. And that's, as many of you know, I'm autistic. That is a common thing in the autism world, is imposter syndrome. And so it's something that I am very well familiar with outside of, the toxic perfectionism that I run into. But it's a really big issue that a lot of people, by not accepting compliments, by not celebrating the success, it leads to a lot of those problems. And that's one of the signs of perfectionism.
Being a musician has
Toxic
made
perfectionism.
that has made that something for me that, it depends on the scenario. So, what the scenario I was talking about is I responded to an emergency situation and did everything right. But at the end of it, when everything it didn't work out exactly the way, but because I did everything right, I still looked at myself and said, something's wrong. Like, I revealed something about me that, like, a vulnerability, and like, that's just a distortion. It's a thought distortion that happened there, where, like, being an entertainer, being a musician for so many years, getting those compliments was normal. For a number of years, I was my own worst critic, and also I would reject the people who came and said, "Oh man, but that was really good." I was like, "No, I screwed up here. I did this, that," that perfectionist
Mm-hmm.
look. But I over the years I've learned, like, I play it off. Sometimes what I'll rather do is, like, totally embrace it and just be like, "Oh, I know. Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Thank you." Like, say thanks, but I totally agree, like, to the point where, yeah, you bet I'm amazing. But it's honestly a mask
Yeah.
for the reality is I'm my own worst critic. I am picking every nook and cranny apart.
Yeah.
So,
And it's really important, when we're talking about these things, knowing what these signs are is working to, counteract those signs. And so when you've got unrealistically high expectations, take a minute,
yeah.
recognize that they are unrealistically high. One thing that I do is, we're developing a financial empowerment program that will hopefully be coming out in the next few months. But it's a program I've used for a long time. We're just adapting it for a broader audience. But one of or a few of the steps within that empowerment system is you write down what your goals are. And that's a great way, if you've got these high expectations, write down what you expect of yourself and talk to someone and see if this is an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
If you are quick to find fault and overly critical of mistakes, write it down, talk to someone else. Am I being overly critical? Am I seeing too much in this? And they'll say, yeah. Now, that's part of a problem of perfectionism, is that they will go to other people to seek validation. But this is a way of helping you to realize that you are doing too much, so that you can hopefully correct yourself.
And that financial empowerment is currently in the perfectionism phase, so that's why you don't see it yet. But
No, it really
a,
is.
a beautiful pairing is something that we also have had in the works for a long time, called neurowarrior.co. Literally, like, and it's not as specifically going after the goal orientation or anything like that, but more just better health for your head. Like,
Yeah.
it's a way to learn some meditative practices and develop some ways to think better, to have a little better self control, some more, hopefully pursue some mental stability with that. It's definitely not a replacement. It's not a therapy, but it is some supplemental aid in some ways to help improve your overall well-being.
So it uses neuroscience, the way that the brain functions, the way that the algorithm system within the brain for processing all the information helps you to remodel and remap the existing neural pathways. So when you've got issues, when you've got problems, it's a way of being able to rewrite the neural systems within your brain to be able to overcome a lot of those. Now, a lot of this is still experimental, but it is a great way when used in conjunction with therapy with other existing models to be able to boost your performance moving forward to be able to overcome a lot of those issues.
So the next one I want to kind of unpack is now the external side. So this is more just going to the relationship aspects of things. And that's, you know, when you pursue perfectionism in a relationship, you're putting, still that internal strain for yourself, but having expectations that are unrealistic on somebody else.
You're the perfect boyfriend, Ted.
Even in the sense of, you know, possibly even avoiding some of those things. So thinking about it like this is if I ask somebody to do something and I want them to do something a certain way, like go, fill a dishwasher. Okay. I asked my son to fill a dishwasher. And then the whole time while they sit there and fill a dishwasher, I sit there, no, 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 don't put it there. Put it here. No, 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 no. Like I want to make sure like, no, 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 that doesn't go. You got to hand wash that one. You can't do that one. Like, no, 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 no. Like the whole time I'm spending all of my energy trying to trying to basically like make sure that they do exactly the way that I have visualized in my head that makes a perfect dishwasher, you
Yeah.
know?
And now there is a difference between this is how it's supposed to be done and then micromanaging.
Right.
And so instructing someone on this is how it's done and this is why it's done, and then you leave them to it. So you don't put your forks and spoons in the top rack, you put them in the silverware rack.
Right.
And if you are one of those that knife always, the top of the knife down or the top of the knife up, seen both ways, or the forks facing up or the forks facing down, tell them that.
I hand wash all of my knives.
Oh, there you go.
Except for like butter knives.
Butter knives are okay in there, but yes, you should hand wash. Just a little bit of soap and water, nothing abrasive.
Nothing. No.
I just use my fingers
Softly.
to actually wash the knife, and then you dry it off so that you don't get. Anyway, knife snobs.
That's a little too knife snobs. Like that.
Again, perfectionism. But you have to let them do it themselves. So if they overstack something, overload something, it's a dishwasher. It'll still get washed. That's what it's designed to do.
Yep.
And there are a lot of things like that. Micromanagers, your boss at the office is, I'm not saying your boss at the office because that's me. Although that could be.
Perfectionist.
Your boss at the office may be a micromanager and is telling you this is exactly how I want it done. This is the exact time frame. This is and telling you, and then they will come in every 10 minutes to make sure that you are following the process. It's not necessarily that they are being a mean person. They are probably just a perfectionist, and this is how it's manifesting. They are fear-based. They are afraid that you are going to do it wrong, and then they're going to get punished for that. And so this is an important thing to remember, that when we do this to others, to not do that. But when someone does it to you, to remember that they are simply terrified about something going wrong. And that's where their perfectionism is manifesting.
That the first one that we were talking about, and this next one is like missed opportunities.
You just missed it.
Even in the micromanagement aspect of it, if you are overbearing and over the top, in that sort of delegating tasks where you literally just don't trust anybody to do it independently, you might get passed up for opportunities like promotions and things like that because you just you have to do everything. You have to be hands on,
Mhm.
and you don't allow anybody else to grow, learn, expand, and help you. You know, if we have a new editor that's helping take care of stuff, and all I ever do is just have them sit and watch me do everything, then I'm gonna burn out. I'm gonna have anxiety, and like I'm gonna stress because I've got too much of a workload. I can't work on other projects. It's just crazy, and I miss the opportunities because I can't execute.
Yep.
I don't have time. It's not perfect enough, and I'm waiting for that opportunity. And that's literally what this one is lack of that execution. And I think of that's where even in the sense of picking a restaurant. Like, oh, I don't know where
Mm.
do you want to eat? I don't want to eat. Like, well, I don't like their rice that they make at that one. It's like, oh, I don't like this. Their food's too greasy over here. I don't know. Picking a restaurant, then you eventually be like, you know what? I'm not hungry anymore. Sorry, missed that. You know, window of I'm not starving, so it's fine. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna eat. You know, and definitely don't have that problem. I don't. I'm working on having that more often. I'm like, this hunger will go away. It's fine. I'm all right with it.
Well,
But
since we're talking about that, a little update on, our health challenge that we did a while back. I'm down about 30 pounds from where I was when we first started.
oh man, I'm about
So
15 down.
there you
So
go.
okay, so perfectionism on social media. I think one of the things a lot of this resonates is unrealistic.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is trying to you see this person, and you see that this person is perfect skin. They have the best hair, they have the most chiseled physique. If they're a dude, their beard is magnificent, and I'm over here going like, man, I wish I can't. Mine has to be like really really maintained just to look decent. And but the idea of it is like, I wrote this down, is perfect lives are just perfect lies. Because literally you add the filters, you add all of this, you put up the camera, but that's not them. That's not the reality. They still go to the bathroom and it smells bad. It's like there's nothing you can avoid. You can't avoid it. Like that's it.
Yep.
So yeah, like when like that was a nice way of saying that.
Yes, yeah.
But it's they amplify. Social media does a really good job of amplifying perfectionism, and those tendencies that a perfectionist may struggle with is just validated more in that kind of environment, and it's completely unrealistic. It's completely dishonest, and it's harmful.
Yeah, I mean, there's an old phrase, keeping up with the Joneses.
Yep.
It's been around for a long time, and it's one of those things where you're trying to keep up with someone else,
Yeah.
but you're not them.
Yeah.
They're not you. Each have the lives that we have, and trying to keep up with someone else just is completely unhealthy. And that's that socially prescribed perfectionism,
Yeah.
trying to just keep up with that social image of what you think everyone is expecting you to be. And to a lot of social media influencers, they like to look nice. I mean, we try to make sure all of our lighting looks good, and I'm not blending into the background because I'm so pale white. But it's a lot of social media influencers will come out and say, this is a show. This is, we have cameras, we have lights, we have all this stuff. This isn't something where you're supposed to be like me. And I think that's a good thing. Not all of them do that, unfortunately, but that idea that we don't have to try to keep up with them.
I don't think
Be
anybody
our own
really
self.
tries to do that or communicates that. It's just there's individuals
Yeah.
that we idolize, and when we idolize them, they are the standard that we set on ourselves, and
Yeah.
it's not their fault.
No,
But our society is prone to that. It's what we
Yeah.
do naturally. Is we look for things like, you want to improve, like this is the take these 10 steps to improve your life and you'll be
Right.
perfect. You're like,
Yeah.
nope.
They
No.
see the success and they falsely create the pattern within their brain that success comes from what this person does. And so they try to mimic that person. They try
Yeah.
to put on the same peacock feathers. They try to do the same things. And it's just, it doesn't work for them because we're all different people.
Well, that's
So,
why like even the social challenges become harmful. Like people like, what is it? Walking up the crates, like the milk crate challenge where you walk up the ladder and fall off and just sever an arm or something like that.
oh,
And,
I don't know that one.
Bird Box challenge where when the Bird Box movie came out, you drive down the street blindfolded to see how that works. I'm like terrible, terrible things. But you think about like one of the Jenner girls, did this thing where like she had these big plush like Botox lips,
Uh-huh.
but she was doing it like supposedly with this like suction cup thing. So it made her lips like huge. Well, then girls were like, oh, that's the next biggest thing. I'm going to stick a freaking suction cup on my face
Yeah.
and make it so that I just burst a blood vessel and my whole lip is split wide open. And you're like,
Yeah.
like have a reason to do, like maybe take up boxing instead of, suction cup.
And I think that's an important thing. And that's why I really like the social media influencers that actually say, I do this for fun. I do this, as a job. You don't need to be trying to copy me. I love those influencers because generally they're aware when they do something new that someone's maybe going to try to copy them.
Right.
And so they put, some kind of a warning or some kind of, disclaimer on there to say, okay, guys, this is just for fun. Don't do this. Things like that. Like the Mythbusters. I love the Mythbusters. I haven't watched the show in a while, but I've been referencing it for like 2 episodes, 3 episodes now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like at least once an episode for the last 15. I don't know.
But they always say, we're professionals. Don't try this at home. We've got safety procedures in place.
Yeah.
That was always really great. We don't necessarily have that in a lot of social media. And I mean, even when we're talking about, image or anything like that, that's one of those things where it's just not, it's hard to say, don't try to be like that, like us, because you like our look. Now, I don't think we're ever going to have that problem. I don't think anyone ever wants to look the dad bod.
Guys, I know I'm perfect, but
if
but
you
there's
really
only one of
like
me.
us,
Only one of me.
I would not recommend, molding your body after this. We've talked about
You
the
need a really big mold.
But that's one of those things. I mean, it's just always being careful as the influencer. It shouldn't have to be that way, but as the influencer, just be careful. And as the viewer of that influencer, just recognize it's not real.
Yeah. So what I guess let's on that note, talk about some healthier perspectives, ways to look at this. So like I think one of the ones that really stands out to me is the idea of good enough. Now I have a hard time with this one because I teach my kids a thought process, and I like, the word mostly, like, oh, like I did most of it.
Yeah.
I got it mostly done. Like I mostly mowed the lawn and I took out most of the trash. And I'd be like, well, how would you guys like it if I made most of dinner? Or I took you almost to school most of the way. Like all of these things that I'm like, you need me to go all the way there, get you there, but you like the turnaround is like mostly is like having that mentality is in my mind. I think of it as that's what good enough means. Good enough is like, well, all right, I'm good enough.
Yeah.
I've mostly, achieved things. That's good enough. And honestly, like that's a terrible way of looking at it. It's not what it is. That's just me being honest with the way that my brain translates it. But good enough is that idea of going like, look, you are good the way you are. You are perfect the way you are.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you need to try to modify because I have to lose an extra, whatever amount of weight. I have to do this many, exercises. I have to wear this kind of makeup in order to have the appeal to the world. I have to have this kind of haircut in order to do this. None of that matters. It's a standard set by an unrealistic world that, it's more about the idea of going like, what is realistic? What's a realistic goal in your life?
And honestly, when you're talking about making dinner, your kids, you tell them, am I going to mostly make you dinner? Well, honestly, a lot of times it is just mostly making dinner. You'd love to make a 3-course meal for dinner every night, but realistically, it's going to be spaghetti from a box, or it's mac and cheese.
It's true. Yeah.
That's mostly dinner.
Yeah.
That's good. You've got to embrace that good enough is good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I know that's a lot coming from two guys who have spent the entire episode talking about our own toxic perfectionism, but it's an idea of we know where our failings are.
This pot is perfectly qualified to talk about the kettle. Okay.
We know ways that we can improve ourselves because we're in the situation. We know what it's like, and we see where when we try to improve, it helps. So like talking about getting a scriptwriter.
Yeah.
I know that I'm just never I can't even rewatch these episodes.
Yeah.
I cannot watch myself on video. So I never see any of these shows when they're done. I think I've maybe watched one. But it's something I know it's not going to work for me as much as I try. And so I got a screenwriter or a scriptwriter so that we can get these things done. Sometimes it's recognizing that it's just not possible. So, but recognizing within yourself that good enough is good enough.
Yeah.
Is good enough.
And on that self note is self-compassion. Like, be nice to yourself. Recognize that you're going to make mistakes. The only reason why you can succeed is because you make mistakes. And part of that success is learning what doesn't work. And how do you learn what doesn't work without having a mistake there? So if you're constantly avoiding initiating anything because you don't want to make a mistake or you don't want to fail, then you're not gonna learn and you won't succeed. So it's recognizing and having compassion for yourself and not criticizing so much because of the fact that you're learning. It's that is essential. So
yeah, and one recommendation from the perfectionism article is use compassionate self-talk and challenge negative self-judgments.
Yeah.
So say nice things about yourself.
I am a winner.
Compassion.
No, I'm not. I lost.
Compassionate self-talk.
That was the last episode, not this episode.
Yeah,
so it's all right.
There's an adage here, and I don't know how true this is, but they ask, which is the happiest person with the Olympics going on in a gold, silver, or bronze group, who's the happiest and who's the least happy? Most people would say that the happiest is gold and the least happy is bronze. And again, I don't have the results of this. This may be apocryphal, but the results go that the happiest is actually the bronze medalist and the least happy is the silver medalist. And the reason for that is because the bronze is happiest because they actually medaled.
Yeah, they medaled. That's what I was
They
thinking.
actually made it. They didn't make first. They didn't make gold, but they made it to the stand. And that's that compassionate self-talk, recognizing I may have not made first, but I made it.
I was in a jiu-jitsu tournament and there was 2 of us in my field. So it was just this guy against me. And I had the technical knowledge about what was going on. I knew what was happening, but I made mistakes because I got frustrated. So I'm perfectionism in my head going, I did this. I lost the match. Okay. He ended up getting me into a submission because of, this reason or that reason. It's the details don't matter. I felt it was unfair, but by the time I was done, I thought it was even dumber that I got silver because I was the only other person there. I'm like, that's literally, I'm the first loser. Like I'm the only loser in this bout because there's no one else in our bracket. So, that's so terrible that I had one fight and that was it. Game over.
Oh no! So, we suck again!
To challenge those negative self-judgments and to have compassionate self-talk. Talking to yourself is good.
Yeah.
Talking to the voices in your head, not good. Talk to yourself, good.
Good. Look at a mirror. That way it's not in your head. Talk about let's talk about this, like setting boundaries. I think setting boundaries is an important aspect of this, in thinking like knowing when to stop, knowing when to like ask for help, knowing when to go like, hey Joe, I can't do all of this. I need more people in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish. So like I think it's thinking that. So getting into that perfectionist rabbit hole you're funneling down, know when to ask for help and know that it's okay. It's okay to communicate that and really honestly go, look, I think I can handle it to this point, and make sure that at that boundary is when you're doing that and not being scared or ashamed of it, because people are going to respect the fact that at that point you're like, all right, I have met my capacity. I need to figure this out. It's really, really important. And I think that also goes in the fact of once you get to that boundary, you delegate, you collaborate. When you're asking for help, it's going, hey, like, can you take care of this? Can you take care of this? You know, even to the point of like recording this episode today, I have delegated the tasks of two other functions in the room that I helped set up, obviously, but the goal of it is so that when I come in, it's already ready to go. That's what I wanted to get to. So it's delegating to that so that I don't have to do it.
And so this is where you can help us by joining our Patreon. You help us to be able to hire more people, and that allows us to reduce our perfectionism problem. So see, you're helping us through joining Patreon.
Yep. Because right now I'm really stressed and I stress eat, so I continue to have more weight gain, or I struggle with the weight stuff, and so I'll have less stress if I have more people being able to take care of that, and then I'll be able to go and work out on some of my more free time instead of doing editing and writing and
Is this other oriented perfectionism, or are we putting an unrealistic expectation on our viewers to support our entire lifestyles?
Yep.
Hey guys, so really honestly, I think the point of this is that other oriented perfection. I struggle with that because I'm always like, okay, well, you got to do this, and then they don't. You got to do this. Like you're right. There's a fine line or a balance between teaching and educating and controlling and perfectionism. But the idea I think here is don't don't focus on things that are unrealistic. Don't set goals that are unrealistic that, you're prone to and setting yourself up for that failure. I think it's good to have that perspective of like, I'm trying to think of somebody that's oriented in that way, that they're not self, they're not failure focused, but they're success oriented, or what did you call that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, so adaptive perfectionism.
adaptive. Yeah. So I can't think, but I think of like really, really successful people. Okay. Like Elon Musk. Okay. Guarantee he's a perfectionist. But in a way, how he has functioned, I know that he has the other side of this, but there are key elements to that he has adaptive perfectionism. And some of those traits are his example at his existence is part of that. It's a good thing. I would say that another
his SpaceX crashes are kind of examples of that. He's okay with those.
Hey, they're calling SpaceX to go save some astronauts in space right now.
Well,
NASA's like, please,
if they can get one of those rockets off the ground.
So it's let's not pursue perfection. Let's not try to let's not try to overly push ourselves. But I think it's recognizing that ultimately that perfection that we try to pursue is an illusion. It's not the truth, and that what you do is great. It's not just good enough; it's fantastic, and and um and be willing to accept yourself and give yourself a little bit of grace when it comes to trying to do these things when you make mistakes. I think it's just really, really important to give yourself more credit than that.
And if you are struggling with perfectionism to where it's becoming this toxic, it's inhibiting you from being able to function, find a good therapist. There are a lot of great
Yeah.
therapists out there, and find someone that can help you, that can talk all through all this with you, and be able to help you to move forward and find that adaptive perfectionism, and find ways to be able to improve your life. That's what therapists are there for.
What I want to do is encourage you guys, reflect on some things that may be in your own life, some of the things that we've talked about. Does it apply? Do you find that you have some perfectionist tendencies? Do you find that that these some of these things resonate with, areas of your life that maybe feel stuck in, maybe feel like you're just stressed about, or that you're getting to a point where you're just tired, and you're kind of getting to the end of that, where you've met that boundary and maybe asking for help. Consider those things, and hopefully apply some of those tips that we shared through this. And we'd like to hear from you as well. Like, if this episode has resonated with you, we'd like to hear some of those stories from it. Well, whether that's going to our neurowarrior.co and sending us a message through there, or through like, you can send a comment on the idiot's guide right here. I don't know if you can message on YouTube. I don't think you can.
You can't message directly, but you can just comment on the episode.
Yeah.
There are ways of contacting us through.
And I'll leave an email link in the show notes, basically. So you can have an email there, that if you feel like that's a way that you'd like to share some of that story, we'd like to hear from it, and hear how some of these things maybe you've gotten from this, or maybe you've overcome in your story. But that also helps us to really get this, and see some of this stuff of our viewers, and see some of the things that we work on and that we create here, as on our channel, is bringing value to you guys, and our subscribers, our viewers, and those that hit our like button. So, um, any final parting words?
Not really. Just, again, everyone goes through this. Everyone, I think, has a level of that toxic perfectionism.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that is the biggest important thing. I mean, we shared some of these ways of recognizing it in yourself and in others, and just be healthy about it.
Well, we've reached the end of our show today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Life's too short, so keep laughing, keep learning, and remember, idiots have way more fun.
I appreciate it.